Thank you for being here. My name is Beitula, and this is Shooting from the Hip. I appreciate you being here. Please keep in mind what we are doing here on Bet On It, Food for Thought and Shooting from the Hip. We explore human ideas, philosophies, noteworthy information. This exploration is us thinking aloud, a thought exercise, jumping into ideas and examining them and re-examining them. You will find we're prone to using adult language and expressing opinions. In keeping with that, you shouldn't believe anything we say. We are not experts of any kind. We are just having fun with these ideas, philosophies, and information in the hopes that you will find it fun and interesting and entertaining. We encourage you to invest time in searching out these subjects and come to your own conclusions. Now, on with the shit show. Slim, how you doing, buddy?
Pretty good. Well caffeinated.
Excellent. It's always a good way to run through the day. Highly caffeinated. Today's topic of conversation is we're going to be discussing things essentially human capacity, human nature, and human instincts. And most specifically, how they contribute and how much they influence our day-to-day living. All right. So I think it might be fair to maybe perhaps start with human capacity itself. So before we jump into instincts. All right. So the idea of capacity. It's essentially when you look at the dictionary definition, it essentially states that the maximum amount that something can contain, or in using it in other language, the potential or suitability for holding or storing or accommodating. So capacity can become an expression of everything that you're capable of, right? And then the way that we typically talk about it, because if people talk about it, the way they'll talk about it, they'll refer to it as something like human nature, right? And so capacity or capability, I think that you can use those all interchangeably, but for the moment right now, we're just simply going to refer to it as human capacity. So that's not confusing. You got that?
That's pretty easy. I got that.
Oh, okay, cool. Because once we start getting into instinct and biological imperatives, that's where you're going to see a lot of overlap, and you can easily get confused trying to make the distinctions between things. So getting on with capacity, and specifically human capacity, it means the development or improvement of individual knowledge, skills, technical expertise, and the ability to adapt and be resilient to change. So it's pretty broad definition that includes a lot of stuff. So not only are we talking about skill development, but also maximizing like your intellect, and all for the purposes of making you better or more adaptive, so that you can again gives you the capacity then to deal with changes, particularly unexpected ones, which is almost always what happens within the course of the average life, right? Like when do any of the changes that occur within the course of the life that you're living, that I'm living, do those changes occur in a bubble? They occur unexpectedly. Their timing, there's no such thing as ideal timing. They just kind of spring themselves on you, and then you're kind of like left having to deal with them. So the byproduct of that very typically then is some level of stress and anxiety with regards to these changes, right? So agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree. Like people that have a high capacity to be introspective, if they have it right before bed, they're going to be
up at 3 a.m.
Yeah, they're going to be cuckoo. Yeah, that's the worst time to have the capacity of self-reflection. It's like you're just about to go to bed and you're thinking, oh, what did I do 5 years ago? Oh, wait a minute, did that come across as mean or this or that? Yeah. But early in the morning, that's when that capacity is a benefit.
Sure, I would agree. Or any time during waking hours, like then typically more advantageous if it's a quiet moment where you can self-reflect, right?
Right.
So the definite advantages to that, right? So, but again, it kind of important. Now, the distinction between like the taking the time to reflect versus like human capacity, which means that personal development, and it's the personal development of like across the board. So from I guess it would include employable skills, but just also in terms of skills, in terms of managing how to deal with people within social settings. I guess that would include social media as well, because that's a significant part of most people's lives. They're tied into it. So these things are constantly bombarding you. You're constantly being stimulated by these things. So it requires a capacity or the ability to manage not just the stimuli, but the way that you perceive or your perceptions of the very stimuli that they're being bombarded by, right?
Yeah, we've touched on this when it comes to like the autopilot mode. That should be easy to say.
Yeah, so your subconscious running the show.
Right, that's allowing the stimulus to, that's allowing yourself to react to the stimulus instead of being observant, being in the present. Also to have like the capacity to stop yourself, which itself I would say is like focusing almost.
Yeah, so again, the capacity to be present and focused in the present. It speaks to what you're saying, that it allows you the ability then to be able to manage whatever the stimuli is. And this includes both positive and negative stimuli, right? Because it's not like we're confronted with a single type. It's usually a mix, right? So, and it's really easy to get caught up in yourself. And the idea of being focused and present means you kind of remove yourself from all that stuff that would essentially distract you, right? So, and then in being present, then now you're able to manage the stimuli. You can deal with, change that as they occur. You're able to manage the changes that occur more effectively in terms of it not exerting a negative effect on you as a person, right? And it's not just us individually. Think of the total effect that 9/11 had on us collectively. So individually, you're perceiving the stimuli and you react to the stimuli, and then collectively as a group. I think it's the only good thing about it was in the immediate aftermath of 9/11 was how it brought people together. People sympathized with each other, and they suddenly were very helpful towards one another. I'm like, where's that every day?
Right.
Right? Well, if you're present, something brings your attention to the moment. It kind of forces that on you, and you couldn't have asked for a larger single event to do just that, right? But I ask you, aren't we confronted by that sort of stuff now with everything that's going on in the Middle East and between Russia and Ukraine? Doesn't that require us to be more present, more focused, and more understanding of each other? Because our reaction, which is what you can sort of characterize by what's going on in those places, is only producing a human body count.
Right.
All right. So it's the failure of not choosing a course of action can lead to untimely deaths or avoidable deaths. Right?
If I was to reduce the reaction, I would say it's fundamentally destabilizing, regardless if it's a positive or a negative stimulus that you're not able to. I want to say regulate, but process.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, because you can be overwhelmed even by good stimuli that you might characterize as being good, and that it can be too much, and then suddenly because you're overwhelmed, it leaves you in a position where you're kind of inert. You're almost incapable of acting,
Right.
And that's a time when you need to choose a course of action. And being reactionary, just reacting to something, might actually make things worse.
Yeah, a lot worse too. Like, there's a lot of politics that surround this issue. Like you mentioned, the multiple wars going on. There's even more wars going on that
Sure.
aren't being public. But fundamentally, when people feel destabilized by a tragic event and then they're asked to pick sides, I feel like that's not the best way to go about it. Like, there should be some time to process it, go through, like, in a daily scenario, you would have to go through how you feel, what's the best course of action. You don't immediately react.
Right. And until you actually get all as much information as there is available, so that you can make a reasoned and sound decision. But again, sometimes you're not given the convenience of that.
Yeah.
So then again, you're required to be. The more present you are, then at least you can choose an appropriate course of action. It doesn't guarantee that it won't be the wrong course of action, but since life doesn't come with any guarantees, then you shouldn't be focused on whether or not it was the right choice. Just that you make a thoughtful choice, one that comes from you being present. But you have to have the capacity to do that, and that's what we're talking about, right?
Right, like someone who's living in a subjective time in their life, let's say, they might be going through even a minor issue. They might deal with it with food, with alcohol, with
some
responsibilities.
form of distraction, or something that provides them comfort.
Right, and we've said, like, time and time again, subjectivity only leads to more subjectivity.
Right, and suffering. Like, ultimately it produces a state of suffering, right? Because you can't get past yourself. So the only thing that you see, particularly if the stimuli is negative, is negativity, and more negativity. It compounds itself. So
Yeah.
then as an individual, it puts you in. It really puts you in a dark place, right? And what you want is you want to be in a balanced place. But
Yeah, like, regardless of what's going on, positive or negative, the best reaction or the best action you can take is to restabilize yourself, which might, in my opinion, I would say it is, but I'm just going to say it might be you look at your capacities, how it relates to your standard capacity, like your current capacity to your average capacity.
right.
Then you could see, like, oh, well, I'm very happy right now, but I'm also very stressed. That seems conflicting. Let me work that out.
Well, again, it's part of the paradox of being here, right? That, like, it's never one thing or the other. It's always everything all at once.
Yeah.
So that makes it doubly more, like, overwhelming. You can see where people would rather fold or seek shelter from something like that as opposed to face it. But the reality is that in facing it, the likelihood is that you'll minimize the worst of the effects that it may have on you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, like, if somebody hands you a collage every hour or two, and, every picture is 1,000 words.
Right.
You get handed that collage, and they're like, figure out what this is. You're like, oh, come on, please.
Yeah, well, not only would it get tiring, but you could see where very quickly somebody could be overwhelmed.
Ideally, the way to restabilize would to be look at the collage and not picture, but kind of pick out what you can. And, like, there's no perfect solutions, but that time spent on processing and restabilizing yourself is so beneficial to mental health, to, well, of course, if it affects your mental health, it affects your behavioral psychology too. Like,
Sure.
Am I feeling stimuli? It's going like, get a beer.
Right. Okay, so that's kind of, those are interesting insights into capacity and as it relates to, like, our day-to-day experiences. So again, you don't need to have, like, once in a lifetime kind of experiences, although they seem to be accelerating in this day and age, right? And in terms of their occurrences and frequency. But as a final thing, I'd just like to comment on capacity. I'm just going to read from my notes. Like, human capacity and its development is defined as a process of learning by which individuals, groups, organizations, and institutions and societies develop their abilities, both individually and collectively. to set and achieve objectives, perform functions, solve problems, and to develop the means and conditions required to enable this process. It teaches individuals to develop themselves and skills more effectively and efficiently, and you know, in terms of like how, because it's ultimately about application, right? So you grow your capacity, your skills, your abilities to be discerning. And then all of that contributes to the greater whole, right? And then the greater whole then is also influenced by this capacity. So the greater the individual capacity, then the greater the collective capacity. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't think anybody would find that too confusing.
Yeah, I really like how that was stated too, because it shows there is a goal orientation to capacity. It's not just you are this thing that can do things, it's you are this thing that can do things and should do things.
Right.
But
And
what things?
okay, that's the trick, right? And the things, I think, in terms of the way that you said it, is that it's to push past the whatever perceived limits that you have, either self-imposed or placed by society on you. So that means like across the board. So then again, we've often discussed how like as a single human being, you're these three elements to each and every one of us, your mind, body, and spirit. So you start with those, and then learning's a chief component to all of this. So then the purpose is to learn everything you can about mind, body, and spirit. And then ultimately, to what end? It's to be more efficient and more effective in mind, body, and spirit. So then, and I summed that all up as self-mastery, right? Because in the self-mastery, then you're able to be centered, present, and then make determinations that are thoughtful and considerate, right? And then come from a balanced place. So then then that's the focus. The focus then for human capacity is the struggle to unify mind, body, and spirit, right? It doesn't matter whether you have a political ideology or a philosophical or religious one. None of that matters. This, in terms of goal and function, it gives you purpose. Because wherever it is you are, there's always room for you to grow. And that's ultimately what this is all about. It's about learning and growth. So that's what leads to greater levels of understanding. And then you becoming more fully realized as an individual, right? So ultimately, human capacity can only be expressed as a direct result of pushing past whatever perceived limits you imagine that you have on you as a person.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I don't think people would know their limits until they hit it and then surpassed it. And then that's kind of meta, because you have to accept that that wasn't the limit and there's more to go.
Right. For me, it was, I'll just share a personal anecdote. So I served in the military, Canadian military, from 89 to 1992. And in that time, the greatest thing that I took from that was the realization that whatever it was I thought I could physically do, that I could exceed that. So in a very vivid and kind of practical way, it demonstrated that to me time and time again for the entire duration of the time I was there, that there's no physical perceived limit that you can't push past. So, and as a result of that experience, it did inform a great deal of my physical development post-military. So I never stopped there. That wasn't the beginning and end. It was just the beginning. And then after I left the military, then I determined the focus of like what physical limits were and how I would explore them. So, and I encourage everybody to do that. It's enormously rewarding and satisfying. And if you don't, if you're a type that doesn't like physical activity, there's some form of it out there that will be challenging enough to you in such a way that you'll also enjoy trying to rise to the challenge. So it's just a matter of finding one that fits your sensibilities. But I can guarantee you, there's a course of physical action or skill development that would provide you this enormous sense of satisfaction. So it's worth the time that you would invest into it. But it's not the only aspect of what you are. It has to eventually it has to be in conjunction with also the development and learning and growth within like your spirit. And again, you define what that is, and your mind. So education then becomes a consideration that like it's the kind of thing that you might have to look at it as something that just doesn't end. That once you've started down that road, that it should evolve as you evolve, and that includes a physical education, say a psychological one for mind, or academic one for mind, and then for spirit, again, that's the big gray area, because it depends on how you want to interpret spirit, whether you buy into the metaphysical idea of a soul, or that it might be just some part of your psychology, right? So it ultimately doesn't matter, but in terms of, and ultimately it doesn't matter how you define it. What does matter is you find a method of training that has a lot of learning associated with it, so that again, for you to grow, and in the growth, it's the ultimate expression of that then becomes you're the master of your household. You're you self-mastery, right?
One interesting thing I've heard recently is that compared to other animals, we still have the what's it called? It's neural elasticity, where you have neurons in your brain that are able to learn and move and function.
Right.
And
neuroplasticity is how it's referred to, right?
Because not elasticity. That's right. A different.
Well, 50 years ago, in terms of the development within the nervous system and the brain and gray matter and all that sort of stuff, it was a pretty closed, bleak kind of outlook that psychology had. But then within that last 50 years, now we've had significant advancements that show that that well into your senior years, you can develop. Neuroplasticity can go on, so you can improve your cognitive functions, no matter where you are in any particular moment in time. That there's room for growth.
Yeah, like I really don't like the expression "you can't teach
an old dog new tricks."
It's like
absolutely can.
I mostly hear that from people who are older than their 30 or 30s, 40s, and they seem like they gave up. They have that spiritual death, and it's unfortunate because you look at human beings and their neuroplasticity compared to like even close things like apes, things we might consider higher order thinkers compared to other animals. Like you look at an ape, theirs not only drops off more drastically than ours, it happens sooner. So for us, it's like we have this this capability of capacity of adapting, and
it's a significant capacity too.
Like it seems like something that people should be more aware of.
I agree, and I would. The only thing I would add to the statement you just made is that our higher order capacity, the only animal that we potentially share it with is with whales, but they're not tool makers. We're tool makers, right? And we not only make tools, we use them so that we can make greater and greater things. So that's, now you want to get into an argument or a debate over whether or not that's a demonstration of like a greater capacity or not. I don't know. But within the limits of the way that we are designed, because we don't entirely understand whales, but we do understand ourselves. And here's the thing. And even in attempting to understand ourselves, we don't know nearly as much as we act and think like we do. So there's lots of room for growth within humanity as a species and as individuals. But if the species collectively is going to change, it's because the individuals then realize human capacity, or their human capacity, and that evolution in themselves produces a greater evolution than across the board. Because if everyone's doing it, then we all lift each other all up at the same time.
Innovations, from what I can tell, typically goes bottom up.
Yeah, everyone assumes that everything happens top down because that's the way typically our countries and our societies are organized. So they're light at the top, but all the decisions are made at the top, and then they disseminate down to the bottom. What the reality is that if you're going to have any kind of real evolution within social orders and collectively across our species, it occurs when an idea whose time has come now becomes part of the zeitgeist of the time, so that now you have a wide majority of people suddenly having the same kind of realization. Then ultimately, what it produces is then like an evolution for the entirety of society, right? So it's to me, that's a super endearing thought. That means, like, once an idea's time has come, there's nothing that can stop it, right? But again, it's left to us as individuals. So the real significant and meaningful changes that ever really occur from the bottom up, not from the top down.
From what I can tell, I have to agree 100%. Yeah.
Yeah, and again, we're just expressing like opinions, but if you objectively kind of look at what's being said, then you'll suddenly see the reasoning, and that it's actually quite sound. That it's not, I'm not sitting here just ranting and raving and flailing my arms over my head. Although that might be fun. It may get you a lot of clickbait, but it might get a lot of people's attention. But that's not what we're here to do. I don't care if you do it. I care if I do it. So it becomes my focus. I'm just simply sharing the idea, and then we're discussing it in terms of like whether or not it's meaningful or even practical. And the reality is that no matter the demands, the societal demands in terms of like occupation and what you have to do, that there's still room within your life where you can divert some time to, evolve your own capacity, to grow it, so that you can feel good about yourself, right? Because that's a byproduct of that. When you actively pursue like the elevation of self, and again, sum it up in the phrase self-mastery, the byproduct is you feel good about you. That you experience a sense of satisfaction that most people don't experience, solely from their occupation. Some do, but the majority of us who work, we don't draw any kind of sense of real satisfaction from our occupation. We're there because of the paycheck, because we need access to resources, which you can't overlook. But again, the question becomes, is that the sum total of who you are? Or do you want that to be the sum total of the expression of your existence?
I think you've been very consistent with the idea that it is bottom up. If you take responsibility and find, I guess I'm gonna have to say, like, what's right for you, for your self-mastery.
That's a perfectly good way to say it.
It 100% supports the bottom-up approach, because you can't support everybody, but you can support yourself.
Right, and that's the place you start. You can
engage,
right,
which we're doing right here.
Right.
I wanted to mention this earlier. I kind of feel like this does definitely take a tone of like a shamanistic TED Talk.
Okay, maybe, but we have defined like philosophy, right. And philosophy is just the love of wisdom, right? So maybe that's the hallmark of this channel. The idea is it's practical, modern day wisdom.
Demystifying.
Yeah, taking all the magic out of it and going like, maybe there is, but I can't spend my time focused on that.
Right.
Instead, the focus becomes a meaningful, applicable, practical, everyday kind of wisdom, so that you can walk through life and not have people hating on you and not hating on people. You know,
Yeah.
and we're all in this. We're all in this shit together, right? Like, so either we're at odds with one another, or we're gonna work in support of one another. And when you reduce it to a choice, I'm going. To me, it seems like there's no choice. The only choice is that we got to work together, right?
Yeah, like if somebody watches the video about whales that we did, it's like they're not going to sit around and be like, oh, I don't like what they're saying about whales. This is upsetting. It's like this is just food for thought.
Right, 100%.
It's so enjoyable. Like,
right.
It's not something that has to be. It doesn't have to be so nuanced that we give you an answer, but at the same time, you can go, "Oh wow, that's fascinating! I didn't know that about whales. I didn't know that."
Right. It's about pointing out insights that might actually, to whomever might be hearing this, that it might actually for them, kind of be the last piece in a puzzle that they needed to finish. Right.
Yeah, and we've been going on about different topics. I love how it's not the same thing or the same type of thing. It's like bits and pieces of whatever is interesting and. You want to do your, I forget, what do you call it? The write-up for it?
Oh, when I do my notes.
Right.
My note package. I like actually taking the time to do it, but...
You provide a perfect piece for, which I don't see, like, there's days where I'm like, oh, that kind of fills out a thought I had, but I haven't fleshed out yet. That was amazing. And I have that eureka moment. There's probably, like, 10 people that had it throughout the course of the, just over 100 videos that...
Yeah, and again, I don't plan on really stopping anytime soon. So and everything that we cover, always indirectly, if not directly, relates to this central idea that like it's the evolution of us as individuals. That's the salvation of the species, of society, across the board. And so then to me, that's really super empowering. That means that everybody has something to contribute. And so if you actively, I'm going to use the language you used, take responsibility for your own existence, and then you actively pursue the elevation of yourself and unifying mind, body, and spirit, self-mastery, however you'd like to characterize it, that it produces something, right? And all of us contribute to it. So it's not like there's a savior coming to make it all right. It's we all make it all right. We all make the difference.
Wait a minute, we're not icons, we're just role models?
Nope, we're just two talking heads.
Hey, isn't that what a role model is? They feed you these ideas which you can think about, and you can either take it if you believe it matches what you are, or you can be like, I don't.
I suppose. I mean, teacher would be a perfectly suitable.
I prefer the title dude.
Dude, yeah. I'm a dude of wisdom.
But I think at least going through the process that you said, like self-mastery, taking responsibility, spending time on these thoughts, it at very least puts you in a better state to be the friend you need to be for the people around you.
Right.
Because you're less stress prone, you're not...
Okay, so then everything that you wished other people would be for you, you become and you provide it for others.
Yeah.
So all of... Everything you ever wanted from a teacher, you become that teacher. You elevate yourself to that level of status, effectiveness, and efficiency, and then you share that. And then that becomes the topic of discourse and worthy of conversation on from moment to moment while you're having coffee, instead of like sports scores or the weather or talking about some influencer. Again, all those things have their place, but if that's all you're doing, then what are you then?
Right. Like, I would much rather hear my friend tell me about, like, how they design Navajo canoes, like, long time ago. I'd rather hear that than something he considered funny from a TV show, like, let's say, Family Dude.
You know what? I'm kind of okay with both. But yeah. I like the idea that somebody would have something that they find super fascinating, that they're willing to share, and that even though you may not particularly find it fascinating, it's still no less interesting in that for what it is, right? And then it gives you something, again, some kind of common ground to sort of like, converse over so that you strengthen your connection with each other, right? That's how you get to know somebody. What are the things that you love? The things that are,
Yeah, there's so many times I've met my friends' friends, and they have so many similar things to me that my friend doesn't have. So like me and them might talk about UFC. We might talk about
or whatever. Sure. Yeah.
like I brought out UFC because
No,
that's the most recent thing that
right,
happened.
right.
It's interesting because there is a certain level of continuity that you'll see in your social groups, even if you're not directly attached.
Yeah, I agree too. I always find it interesting how birds of a feather flock together, and without intentionally seeking each other out, they just overlap, and the overlap is like through that network of people that you become connected to. So then and that when you look at the place where everybody kind of connects, no matter how small of a margin it is, it's super weird because now you have this kind of foundation for your friendship, right?
Yeah, like I've met people that were deep thinking, and I realized it like about 5 seconds in the conversation. I was like, "Holy shit! Wait a minute, what?"
Uh, so human like as a final thing I'd like to say about human capacity or capabilities, it really does cover the wide gambit of virtually everything that we do as human beings, from life in like general to like bodily health to bodily integrity, um, sense of self, emotions, practical reason, affiliation, relations, respect with and for others, and that includes other species. Think about how many dog and cat lovers there are out there. There are living things, right? And they deserve equal consideration and respect. Like, are they? And then you can get caught up in the argument if you want over like, are they equal to us? I mean, that's if you ask
Right.
a dog lover or pet owner, they'll tell you absolutely they are, right?
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
no, it's okay.
Yeah, when somebody says, "Oh, it's my baby," I was like, "That's not a baby.
But
Babies are different."
yeah, right. But it doesn't mean that they don't love their pet like it was a baby.
Right.
It's just for us who don't have that experience, or that's not part of the lexicon of our day-to-day experience, that we don't focus on like a pet, another living thing. It's not our focal point. It might seem even unusual, but that doesn't make it unusual for them.
No, I've had pets before. I prefer dogs, but cats, uh, they also have like this personality you'll see, and it does show you like, hey, this is kind of amazing. Like, it's not just an inanimate object or a clump of brain cells. Like, it has personality. It genuinely loves. Like,
Yeah, my children are pet owners, and when I listen talk about their pets, um, they don't talk about them any differently than they would talk about any one of their human friends. So I don't. To me, it's provided me a great insight into, because I'm not a pet owner, right, and I don't actually really aspire to be a pet owner, but I do love dogs. But having said that, I now it makes more sense to me than it ever did in terms of like how the affinity that people will have for their pets, right? It really is a loved one. So and and to minimize that or treat it like somehow that there's something that it's inappropriate and stuff, I think it's kind of just silly. It's just them loving another living thing,
right.
right? Why should it be any different than them loving their brother, their sister, their parents, or whatever, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely in support. When you have a pet, like, the, part of the responsibility of having the pet is you keep it alive and you also give it a life that it's happy to live.
Right, and then in doing that, then you have the capacity now to share, affection and love for one another, because they reciprocate. It's not like they don't demonstrate it, right? And getting on with human in terms of like just to say a few more things to sort of sum up human capabilities. Now with the advancements of personal technology, so when you talk about pushing the boundaries of human capabilities, technology provides an even greater ability to do that. Think about the fact that like what we're doing, that we, on camera we have this conversation and then we post it so that groups of people or other people can engage with the conversation, maybe not directly, but then for them to sort of like entertain the ideas that are being expressed, and then that makes for again an interesting way to sort of, that a technology allows for the broadening of capabilities or capacity without it being kind of like very formal. It doesn't have to be formal. It can be in this casual kind of setting and just as a result of a casual conversation.
Yeah. The level of technology you need to have a podcast could be really like minimal. Like cheap microphone. You don't really.
You mean like our stuff?
Well, no, I mean like cheap. I mean like $20 microphone,
I guess
terrible quality.
Honestly, you could pull it off with virtually anything. And so if this is what you aspire to, then let the aspiration drive you, and then you find a way to make it work, right?
Yeah, because it's like they have a proxy to a discussion that they might have not have seen.
Right, and these are, and again, I think these subjects that we discuss are like timely. They're like, it's about time that people start having these types of conversations, even in the face of like the constant distraction of like social media and the essentially overstimulation as a result of like information saturation, like
Right.
that's what the internet's allowed for. Can you imagine what would happen if the internet tanked just for a week? Like it just shut down for a week.
Yeah.
People would lose their fucking minds.
I thought you were saying something along the lines of net neutrality, which would also be devastating. But
No, I'm just saying that like
no internet,
no internet at
yeah.
all. Imagine how for some people it would be absolutely devastating.
I'm going to be honest, it's a death sentence for younger people. Some of them, honestly, without access to Instagram, Facebook, whatever their social media is, between that, entertainment, let's say gaming, and also just scheduling, checking the buses,
Right.
Getting your work schedule. There's a lot of people who are not, this is scary, not that much younger than me. They're just completely incapable without the internet.
See, that's funny, and to me, I find it very satisfying that I'm not dependent on technology, like that. Not in a profound way. Like I do appreciate the advantages of it, certainly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But it's one of those sick jokes that's like, that's so messed up, dude. You start giggling, but it's not a positive thing.
No, I agree. I can see where that might be very. Just pray the internet doesn't go down.
How many times have we giggled over like the most ridiculous stuff?
Well,
like, this would be bad.
Yeah, why? It's because I think it's because of like how ridiculous it seems. Like so when you say it out loud and you suddenly find yourself going like, shit, like could that be an eventuality? Or if that was an eventuality, then can you appreciate how much of a negative effect it might have on people? So again, we digress. We're certainly like going far afield with commentary in terms of. I even forgot where we were going with all of that.
Oh, shit, sorry.
That's okay. It's all part of the game, right?
Yeah.
All right. So not that I'm religious, but I find there's this interesting quote from the Christian Bible that seems like a comment on human nature or human capacity. And I'm not one of the faith-based. I don't believe in anything, but I found this statement kind of interesting, and it simply says that it's the first statement from God about man, and it's kind of crucial when you. I'm going to read it to you, but when you hear what it's essentially saying, it's from Genesis 1:26 and 31, and it says that God made man and women in the image of God. So in some sense, humans were created to be godlike, though not in power or omniscience, but perhaps in capacity. Right? So
that could get tricky to think
well,
of, but at least like we are adaptive, we are the type to create things.
Well, I think it speaks to the idea that like that we have the potential, so much unrealized potential, that in a manner of speaking, God with a little g, that we become, but that our capacity is our potential capacity is so great that if we could realize it all, that there might be virtually nothing we couldn't do. Right? Think about how far we've come in the last 100 years. And this speaks to the value of learning, education, right? Like all this technology that we experience, it's not an accident. It's a direct result of like applied thinking and trying to understand things better and more effectively. And it's so in 100 years, it's taken us from horse-drawn wagons to like rockets to the moon, and a planetary network that almost all of us can access relatively freely. Like I'm going, come on! If you can't see it, you might be blind, and I mean that not literally. Right?
I mean, it sure beats people passing away from like regular fevers that we get. Like we have so many benefits to our society. This is actually one of those times I would really love to hype up artificial intelligence, just how amazing it could be.
Well, again, we did discuss it at length in an episode, and it made for a super interesting conversation. But my personal feeling is that it's an inevitability, AI, and that under the best conditions, that it'll be a mutually beneficial kind of relationship that'll result from it being introduced into day-to-day function, right. Day-to-day living, right? So then you'll have this artificial or synthetic intelligence and it commingling with the biological intelligence. And what does that translate into ultimately? It's the kind of thing that you can speculate as wildly as you like about, but the reality is we won't know until we're actually there, right? And I don't see it as being something in the not too distant future. I see it as something that's going to be occurring over the course of the next couple of years. Like never mind 5 years or a decade or 20, like next 3-4 years. I think it's going to be in our face. We're going to be going like, what just happened?
Right.
Right.
I think I mentioned ChatGPT, the newer one recently.
Yeah, they're at a 4th iteration of it now.
Right. I think I was wrong about what its capacity was. I said something that it's either linguistically, it's better linguistically or mathematically. I forget which one I said.
Well, they are using it to try and decipher the language of sperm whales. So it speaks to like how potent it is, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say with newer versions that are coming out, it's a possibility you might have a very real feeling of a conversation with GPT, whichever version it would be, and you could have these really deep philosophical questions and talk to ChatGPT as if it is there with you. Like it's
because in a manner of speaking, it is there with you. So if you're engaging with this disembodied voice, that basically any question that you can ask, it will have the ability to access all the totality of all of our knowledge and information, and then provide you not just a single answer, but the broadest answer to any single question. I'm going, isn't the whole premise of Star Trek built around that idea, right?
I think
I love Star Trek.
I think ideally it would work like that. Because if you think about any question you could ask, once you get the answer, you'll realize like there's better ways to ask it.
Okay.
Maybe that's not exactly what I'm asking.
Okay, so then, as a result of being able to have an interaction, say with something as sophisticated, Chat GPT-4 or whatever the newest iteration is, that now that as a training tool, it makes you better able to engage in conversation. So then when you actually have a conversation with another organic intelligence, you're more effective at communicating with them as a result of having. I'm not. That's again, it's a wild speculation on my part, but could that be a potential outcome?
I mean, assuming ChatGPT, whatever version is civil and it doesn't just act in
It's not a Terminator.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't act in weird.
Well, the history
ways.
of science fiction doesn't paint a very very pretty picture of our interactions with.
It definitely biased me to be a little scared about these ideas of like AI. But to that quote, the quotation.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Isn't it interesting? The capacities we have might be little G God version. We're adaptive. We're future look. Like we look in the future. We look in the past. We have the ability to be present. We have the ability to create, adapt. And not only that, we're toying with life itself now.
But what I find even more interesting, like all that being said, and we still don't quite definitively understand what we are.
Yeah.
Right? Like we still represent the ultimate mystery. So all this other stuff's going on, and we've clearly demonstrated high capacity and ability, and yet we don't have definitive answers to who and what and why we are. And so maybe to a degree, the conversations we're having is to bring that to people's attention, to go, here, maybe we don't need a definitive answer. What you need is a direction and a purpose, and then you move towards that.
Right.
And part of that means then figuring out what we are.
I was going to say there's so many prerequisites to ask how we are, why we are. Like, to get to why, it's like you need the what, you need to know like everything that brought us to this point, like, and that doesn't bring up all the much deeper questions. It goes back to fundamental, like, why do we structure things like this? Why is industry like this? That doesn't even get close to like, what are we? Why are we?
Or why? Or in terms of, okay, I'm taking that a step further. Why do we think in the way that we think? Why do we have emotions? Why does our brain function in the way that it functions, right? So tying it back to self-mastery, if you can learn to understand these biological functions, then you can master them. And then mastery of these functions, then because you change the nature of your relationship with them.
Right.
So
ask better questions.
Or the perspective you have on your emotions. They are no longer influencing your judgment and your behaviors, right? Think about that for a minute. Like that, how much influence do our emotions have on our decision making? Not just there. The random thought generator from the default mode network. How much does that have an effect on our decision making? Conversely, if you're able to get to master the task positive region or network of the brain, then you're more easy to enter flow state. How does that influence your decision making? Now, which would service you better? Right? So in a practical way, then you go here, practically mastering yourself, which I would suggest that meditation becomes a part of that. Certainly can't force everybody to do that, but you can lead a horse to water. And then it's up to the horse to drink or not drink, right? So we have at our disposal the capacity to master ourselves. right? And so now we're kind of moved from human capacity now to like questions of human nature, right? And human nature is generally described as being the psychological characteristics, feelings, and behaviors, traits of humankind that are regarded as being shared by all humans. So we know everything I just cited. We know that to be true. It's at work in every single one of us in varying degrees, right? Um, it's supposed to be. Human nature is anything that not only that we all commonly share, but it's naturally innate and considered the essence of humankind. What it means to be human, right? That those things are part of those things. You can't ignore those things. They're absolutely part of who we are, right? Um, so uh, so then being like I've often cited that human nature in terms of like it's six. I assign 6 characteristics to human nature. I'm not an expert. It's just from my observation. It's all entirely anecdotal, and so I cite that like intelligence, curiosity, creativity, adaptability, emotions, and sexuality are our nature, and then all our behaviors stem from those natures. So I don't want to get too caught up because I often hear from people all the time going, well, aggression. I go, but aggression you can tie to biological imperative. It's their survival instinct at work, right? So it's the thing that wants you to preserve yourself, but. And even though we all share the capacity for that, and we demonstrate in varying degrees, I I guess you could say that it is part of human nature, but I think it's more that it's derived from the 6 that I've cited, right? So intelligence is the ability to acquire, apply knowledge and skills, and so everybody demonstrates this capacity to a greater or lesser extent. And you can it can be self determined. It can be self fulfilled that you can in terms of like the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and to develop skills. Every one of us can do it. So part of self mastery then becomes the realization of your intelligence or that intelligent capacity. Um, it's not a finish line. It's not like there's a goal that you're gonna hear. Now you've realized it in its entirety. I don't know that yet any of us ever could, but I would characterize intelligence as the ability to be discerning, right, and to be able to make uh, problem solving and to make good decisions. And you can only achieve that through development and growth of your intellect and then mastery of your emotions, because your emotions will again do drive behavior, and you want to change the nature of the relationship. Emotions to me are completely tied to that survival instinct, so I think that's where aggression comes from, right? So if it's a function of our biological imperative to the instinct to survive. Emotions become the inducement for that. So then mastery of emotion means essentially then not the elimination,
Right.
but the capacity then to minimize aggression and potential violence, or then you can choose it as a course of action, because under the right circumstances, situations, and conditions, it can be the most appropriate, most intelligent thing that you could do. But you have to determine that as a result of thoughtfulness, and then that takes you to that conclusion, right? So, and I would offer up this, that the only time you ever need to be aggressive or to act violently is because it's for all the marbles. And what do I mean by that? That there's a clear and present danger that your life your life is threatened, and the outcome should be obvious. That's the only time you ever need to act in an aggressive or violent capacity. Anything else is just the guerrilla dance. It's just some asshole trying to assert dominance, like I'm the one who gets first choice or whatever, right? Like that kind of that whole like alpha kind of thing within the fixed community of the pack, right? That we have to, again, part of self-mastering is evolving past that it's no longer a requirement. But again, it doesn't, it recognizes the value in being able to defend oneself, right? So again, I think aggression, even though people do cite that as human nature, I think it's tied more specifically to emotions. So then it speaks to why it's important then to master emotion. And by mastering, I don't mean controlling it and suppressing it. I mean, you change the nature of your relationship to it, so it no longer is influencing your judgment. You start favoring other aspects of human nature. So we cited the first one, which was intelligence, curiosity, and creativity. That those can be, again, that you can realize those more fully, more completely, so that you push the limits of the capacity of intelligence, of curiosity, of creativity, and then it allows for you the ability now to make to problem solve and make decisions that reflect creativity, intelligence, and curiosity, right? That then it produces thoughtfulness, right? Agree, disagree?
I agree. I think about emotions as a guide because it gives you a perspective. It's almost like a guide you don't get to choose. When you have these emotions that are strong and they're acting up, they put a filter on your perspective. They of course, they have that drive. They're all drive. It's 100% drive towards a certain action.
Right, which is self-preservation,
Right.
And then it's in conjunction with aggression. So, to me, everything you just finished saying about emotions, it says to me that emotions need to be brought under heel. That you can't allow for emotions to be dictating decisions.
Right. Because if it did, you would be a subjective, reactionary person.
Right.
That sounds dangerous.
That is enormously dangerous. So then, and think about how many people that describes in terms of how they make their decisions. So then it's important then to change the nature of your relationship with emotions. There's no getting rid of them. It's
good.
Well, it's not good or bad. I don't see it as being either. I just see it as for what it is. That it's the inducement and a significant part of the survival instinct. And you could lump ego, as far as I'm concerned, you can lump ego in with emotions, that it wants you to be center. It's the thing that fuels the subjectivity of your experience. And remember, subjectivity unchecked will lead to your suffering, will always produce suffering. So your inability to be able to see past your own self-interest and subjectivity only allows for you to suffer. So mastery of that and learning to change the nature of your relationship to it, because you're the one who said it, it's a powerful drive, powerful motivator. So the master of their emotions doesn't deny them. It channels the power of the emotions into drive to do things that it requires. And I'd say more typically physical things, right? That it would power you to drive through things physically.
I think under ideal conditions where you are a master of your own emotional spectrum, I think it would be good to keep emotions because they have some implicit drive.
Right, but it
takes a lot of work to get there, but
there's no getting rid of them. Right?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, me neither. I'm not, and none of this is bad or good. So I don't treat it like, oh, it's a negative or a positive. That you can't look at it like that. That you have to look at it that it's part of our experience. And then the question becomes, are you going to let this one part of your experience dictate how you're going to behave throughout the course of the day? Who's in charge? Right? Is it your intelligence, your curiosity, and creativity, or your emotions? right? So that I think that again another struggle to unify that this is the struggle to unify spirit as I see it, spirit and mind.
I was gonna say, this is something I want to bring up before, specifically about curiosity,
Sure.
but it seems like a lot of the I'm gonna say psychological stimuli we get that applies to uh, our biological imperatives, like our ego, our aggression. A lot of these things seem like there's abstractions of them. Like creativity seems like to me it could be compared to like the mutation of a gene. Like there's a certain percentage of things that should stay the same, and if there's a mutation, there's a chance it's going to fail. But it could also be the key factor that
Okay,
pushes it beyond.
okay. In terms of the way like that, I see creativity uh, um, as a aspect of human nature. Is to me, it's not the act of creation. It's the capacity to use your imagination for original ideas, for thinking, that allows for you then to be able to entertain ideas that exist outside of what you how you currently think. This is again, this
Oh,
speaks to metacognition, right? So creativity is not just artful expression. It's not just you being an artist. It's also your ability to imagine and envision things.
yeah. Yeah, no, that is so spot on. I've heard this one story where it's not a story. It was a sort of an anecdote where this person was laying out the person that sees a piece of art and is just awestruck by it. They saw something creative, masterful, like expressive in a way they can't comprehend, like
Right.
in the most forward way. But the artist, they don't either. They're just closer to it. They're a little bit closer to whatever that muse is, and they get that through the self mastery and the reflection of self.
Well, again, I think creativity can be expressed in a number of ways, and I think if it's uh, when it's actively present in everything that you do, it manifests in those things that you do. So, and again, it allows for you. I don't want to use the expression creative problem solving, but it does. Like, so when the moment you apply creativity to problem solving, that's when you come up with novel and perhaps new ways of addressing things. So to me, that's why I attribute it to human nature, right? So again, so to be clear, so the first three uh, of the six characteristics of human nature, as I see it, is intelligence, curiosity, and creativity. Curiosity, why it's so potent, it's the intellectual motivation to learn something, right? And when you're struck by something and it's curious to you, that's opening the door to further understanding, because now you're driven by this desire to know, to understand, right? That's what curiosity is, and that's why I go to my way to sort of point that out as a, again, a component of human nature, right? Uh, and we did touch on emotion, so that's like the fourth one. And there's no real order to these, right? There's just six in total. But the last two, which we haven't talked about, is adaptive, or the ability to adapt to different situations and circumstances, capacity to consistently be able to change to accommodate and maximize demands of environments, traits that help any organism, plant or animal, to successfully survive. So when I cite it as part of our nature, remember, humans exist in they find a niche virtually in every environment on the face of the planet, and the ability to adapt and be better suited for that environment. The sea nomads, we discussed them. You look at the Inuit. These are people who've thrived in the most inhospitable of conditions. Well, not the sea nomad so much, because the ocean is rich in terms of like stuff to harvest, but you're living on water, right? And we have legs. We're designed to be, living on land, right? And they adapt in capacity, not just in their physical abilities, but in terms of now the way that they organize as societies and communities, and are able to thrive under these conditions that might seem unusual. So adaptability, again, is a human characteristic that, given enough time, we can adapt to virtually anything. So all it really means is that it makes you sensitive to change, so that you can accommodate the change, no matter what kind of changes there are. So then, to me, it's the ultimate expression of your ability to survive anything, right? So again, it speaks to us specifically, the greatness of humans, our human nature. We're far greater thing than we've ever been led to believe, and the sad thing is, most of us hate ourselves to some degree, or hate our existence. I'm not a super huge fan of the way we organize as societies, but in terms of what we are as human beings, from what I've been able to learn in the last 58 years of my life, is that we are worthy. We're more than worthy, but you got to rise up, right? If you're not rising up, motherfucker, then you're worthy of nothing. So you seek challenge, right? Struggle. And then you self-mastery, unify mind, body, and spirit. That's how this shit happens. So these things that I've identified as our human nature, these are the areas that you focus then more specifically in terms of like how do you train them, how do you come to terms with them so that you become master of these capacities. And sexuality is the last one, and it's a huge driving force outside of emotion. It's probably the single biggest drive, right?
Is this the biological imperative?
No, this is all human nature. So sexuality is a big part of human nature. It's also, and again, remember, there's a lot of stuff that would be, that you could characterize as being survival instinct or biological imperative. They're all extensions of, my feeling is, of these six. So remember, we cited aggression. That, to me, it's an extension of sexuality and emotions, right? In terms of survival instinct, because depending on the circumstances, displays of aggression might be the most appropriate course of action. Animals do it all the time in the natural world. They display aggression. They very rarely do they take each other's lives. They just do it to assert dominance. But it's a survival instinct. It's a function because it wants its genes to successfully move through time into the future. So it has to aggressively assert its dominance to be able to do that. Well, so aggression then isn't really part of human nature, or an extension of like a combination of our emotional drives and our sexual drives, right? Because that's what it wants. It wants you to be a successful organism, that you pass your genes on successfully to another generation, and that promotes and your genes move through time into the future.
That's a pretty damn solid argument for it being part of our nature.
Yeah, but it's not human nature. It's an extension of human nature. So
yeah, like it's like you have a subset of rules, and then from there you get a lot more things.
Yeah.
Like creativity, I don't know if I would put it directly as nature or a byproduct of nature, like our other nature.
You mean intelligence and creativity? I think intelligence, creativity, and curiosity, I think they're hardwired into our nervous system.
Right, but I could see intelligence and adaptability becoming creativity, because I'm very iffy on this subject.
I was just, go ahead, just finish what you were going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm pretty iffy on this subject because I haven't thought too much about a lot of this. I've thought about intelligence. I've thought about creativity, like at length. Same with like adaptability. But I think the choice. I can't pronounce anything.
Yeah, it's okay.
The choice of these are absolutely like 100% right on for me because I believe if you take out any one of these things, as a human being, you are kneecapped.
Right, I agree. So I would lump adaptivity, intelligence, creativity, and curiosity as being like that's where our higher order capacity is, and that's why we've been able to do the things that we've done historically speaking in terms of like evolution of technology. That all that stuff is a direct result of adaptability, intelligence, curiosity, and creativity. And then the more primal stuff is emotions and sexuality, and that's the drive to thrive, like not thrive, to survive into the future. That I think so. So I think these things, again, unfettered, unchecked, then they're making decisions. Because intelligence, you can think about how many people are so cold in their intelligence that they disassociate with others, and then now they're just so such raw intellect that they're not moved by the suffering of others. Right? So again, unmastered intelligence it's a double-edged sword. All these things. Right? So mastery of our nature, and if this is accurate description of our nature, becomes paramount. It should become your purpose, because this is the owner's manual for being human, kind of laid out for people, whether or not they want to buy into it or not. And remember, I don't require your faith. You don't need to believe into it. Believe in it and anything that I'm saying. Just think about it in terms of objectivity, and you should come to the very same conclusions.
I at least think if you keep in mind the nature of humanity or of humans, and also the biological imperative of humans, you could look around any city, any place that there is industry, housing, like anything we've constructed. I think you would be able to like
attribute it to human nature.
I would say attribute, or at least break down like visually, like, oh, it would make sense a human would make this if you're trying to think of it as like a third perspective.
Oh, okay. I get what you're saying. So from a third person kind of perspective, then the way we organize, the way we do things based on our human nature, should lead to this. I mean, it seems like the most likely way that we order. Well, think about the way we've organized for as far back as written history that we have. So say for the last 6,000 years, that it's all hierarchies, right? And we talked about that earlier, where it's top down. It's a small minority at the top, a large majority at the bottom, and the majority at the bottom do as they're told and dictated to by that small minority at the top. Well, a person who is master of self, you can't do that to. There's no need for hierarchies anymore. Maybe that's the ultimate social evolution. No longer requiring hierarchies. Maybe that's the hurdle for the last 6,000 years that we've been trying to get past. And the only way to get past it then becomes that your individual purpose, outside of an absolute definitive purpose for why we're here, is self-mastery.
That's really interesting, because if you think about the hierarchical way we interact with each other, there's certain responsibilities that we're forced to take up. But if the individual chooses the responsibilities, and they're very aware of what they're doing with intelligent, creative, and like I would throw in caring thought, they don't need the hierarchy. They just
behave appropriately.
Yeah, they look at the dynamic between them and the other, and they're like, hey, I fucking like this guy. I'm not going to screw him around.
Or they're so present that they don't wait for somebody to do something that requires being done, needs to be done at that present, current moment in time. They simply do it. I'm here. It needs to be done. I do it. I don't wait for someone to go, hey, you, go over there and do that.
Yeah. Like if I throw my pop can in the trash and I miss, hits the ground, I'm going to pick up my pop. But hey, there's a wrapper there. I'll grab it too. Why not?
Okay. So, again, it really does speak to the idea then, the importance of what the next evolution is for us outside of our advancements in technology. What are we going to do about us?
Right.
Right? Well, mastery of self, mastery of human nature, right? Unify mind, body, and spirit. You can use whatever language you want to sum it up, but that's essentially what, to me, makes the only real sense in terms of what we do next. Because it's either we move forward like this or it's more of the same shit. And that means essentially victimizing each other and taking advantage of one another for our own personal gains. So if you're okay with getting fucked over and being fucked over, then you know what? You're good as gold. You're already there. Why do you need to do anything more? Just keep trying to acquire and accumulate as much crap onto yourself as you can. Right? How satisfying of an existence is that?
I mean, it might come across as satisfying to that person's perspective, but I would say ultimately, that's just a burden.
Right.
So who needs shit?
So it's a perception. So I go, so where's greater value? In the perception that you're going to be satisfied with all the distraction that you can accumulate and everything that, or you go here, do I make my life about something else?
Man, do you know how upset I get when I hear about people going off about like, oh, I need this, I need that, I need security. It's like, you need security? You're going to get security? How? Like, there could be World War III tomorrow.
Yeah,
Who knows?
I would just offer, when I hear people say stuff like that, I only have one response: grow the fuck up.
Yeah. No.
Stop behaving like somebody who thinks that that all of this, none of this is susceptible to change. None of this is potentially capable of being destroyed. Being alive is a risk. Being here is a risk. Right? But you can make it a calculated risk. You don't have to be afraid of it. You just simply have to live. But that living does not require, it doesn't require you to create such a bubble of insulation so that you're completely cut off from the rest of the world because you're so safe and secure. Like, that's a madness of its own kind.
Yeah. Some of my neighbors who immigrated to Canada, this is when I was very young, they lived in communities where they had an open door policy, but it's because they had no doors. Their small community was quite literally a family. Like, they treat each other like family, and that was the most optimal way to get through hard times, and they were going through very hard times. So wouldn't that be reflective of what our individual lifestyle should be like, and also what we gear our social parameters
all right,
around?
so then something old is something new. Then this idea that, hey, if you actively take responsibility for yourself, who's a threat to you? No one. So then why do you need to protect yourself other than having the capacity to protect yourself, the ability that you can tie that into self-mastery, right? That you have the ability to protect yourself because you're trained in such a capacity, right? Because that goes hand in hand with the struggle to unify mind, body, and spirit. Who are you afraid of then? Why would you need to lock anything? So maybe the ultimate evolution then of society is for no matter how great the society is for the society to achieve a social level of interaction where no one's a threat to each other. You don't feel threatened, so you don't need to lock shit up.
I would love to point out how some places have used social governance as a way to. They implied they were trying to get that. There's no fear. There's no inequality. But that's not.
That's an individual thing. I hate the idea that they think that they can legislate that, and that you can't. like create a body of laws and say that like impose this on everyone. It has to be or much more organic. The individual has to come to those conclusions on their own and then realize the value in it and then find the way to apply it, make it real in their life.
Exactly. Like any, this is a little off topic from that, but if you think about all these notes you've written out and we've been speaking about so far, it could have easily been used for us to kind of like create hysteria. Like, look at how we could be acting. Look how bad it is. But at the same time, it's much more like. Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm having a hard time phrasing this.
That's okay. Find the words.
But we came to this conversation interested and really dedicated to like, hey, let's have a fun conversation, and then it just gradually progressed to a super positive point. It's not like we're here looking like, oh, things aren't the way they should be. It's just, oh, no, wait, look, you can have a better day tomorrow.
Right.
That's
okay.
such a more positive and easygoing way of
Okay.
having this discussion.
Part of the way that the way that I approach all of this is that it's an organic, unscripted conversation.
Right.
So when I make notes, it's so that I can be technically accurate when I'm citing stuff, right? So because that's important, right? Because it's then to a degree, then the conversation is leaning on evidence to support what's being said in the course of the conversation, right? So that's why there's notes. It's the only reason why so that technically I'm accurate with regards to like speaking about it's very specific things.
Sorry, this is what I was trying to get to. But
sure.
You're reading off of this when you need to. It's not like this is your guide, you have to use it.
Yeah,
it's only when you need that critical mastery of information.
Right. So I pull so my note package. There's not like I try to organize the notes in such a way that that makes sense. That like you're gonna start with this one particular aspect and you move on to this next one because there seems to be like a natural progression.
Right.
So that's the way I organize the information, but I don't adhere to it. I don't sit there and go, okay, I'm gonna this and then this. I let, like you say, let the conversation occur organically, and so it's not scripted. I mean,
wouldn't that be a better model for the way we are as people? It's not forced.
Organic, unscripted.
Oh my God.
Didn't we talk about? I think one of the earliest episodes we did was remember. I don't know if you remember when the Taoist concept of Wu Wei.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the idea that you don't force things to happen. You have the intention to do something, and then you allow for it to organically occur.
It works at least in these discussions. I could see it working much better at large.
I think it could work in the way that you live your life. But that requires every individual then to change the perspective and the way, because everybody assumes the way that they've been conditioned by society and the educational systems and any ideologies that they adhere to, that this is the way that you're supposed to do things. It's not the way, it's their way.
Right.
And remember when I talked about the way is just the path that you're walking. And then if you have any kind of if you're present and you're aware of the path you're on, then you'll always choose like a reasonable, sound way to travel. And you can use that again as to reflect in life, right? That you don't there's no forcing shit to happen in life. That you have to be sensitive enough that you're able to bend and move with the way it wants to move. So part of it is knowing when to lean into it and then when to back off, right? And it's no different in conversation. It's no different than living life. But we never talk about life in those terms. And so it's a foreign idea. And so the moment people will hear something like that, and because I've heard it from, that's bullshit. But the best response I get is, how do you do that? I'm like, well, it requires you to cultivate like the ability to feel your way through each moment. That means being present. And then if you're present, whatever happens in that very specific moment, you will move and react and interact in a way that's appropriate given the details of those circumstances. But nobody talks like that. But I'm always amazed how positive people do respond to it, and then there's always a negative detractors like, "This is bullshit." Yeah, you're a moron. So
yeah, somebody who's been well propagandized, they're gonna think the woo way is woo woo.
right.
If any fucking mildly attentive person hears what you just said, they're gonna say, "Wait a minute, we don't need to get freedom through forcing others to follow our beliefs. We just have to be free and allow others around us to be free without our perceptions bearing down on them."
Okay, so it's interesting you brought up freedom, and remember, very typically in first world countries, and particularly here in the West, we confuse the freedom of speech, the freedom of thought, and the freedom of action as being freedom. But if all that stuff is filtered through the influence of patriotism, your country, your nationality, your religion, all those things that we use as to make distinctions, subjectivity, then here's the question. How free are you really? Because you're not acting freely. All that freedom that you're expressing is under the influence of something else. So then guess what? You're not free. Right? You're never fucking free. You're only free if you're completely objective and in the present moment. Now you have the freedom to act in a way that reflects the requirements of that moment. That's freedom. Right? But somehow we've got it confused in our head that, if I could say whatever I want, do whatever I want, I'm free. You're not. Because all those things, all those, any kind of action, course of action you take, any kind of behavior that you take, will be under the influence of something else.
I would argue that the more perception of freedom we have without real freedom, without, getting rid of propaganda, all these companies trying to take advantage of image.
Just let them do their thing. You don't have to pay attention to that stuff. You're not obligated to. If you're being bombarded by that stuff, it's because you put yourself in its way.
You're right, yeah.
Yeah, you just turn those motherfuckers off. I don't mix words, especially with regards to authoritarianism, corporatism, and anyone who thinks that they're self-determined when what they really are is like trapped in subjectivity. I don't like any of you. I will never like any of you. You're the enemy. Right? Fuck you. Right? So how do you like them eggs?
I was gonna say, I don't know. I feel like we all go through that a bit.
I'm just saying, you don't have to come under heel. Look, they realized the last great war that was fought, World War II, was the last attempt at them trying to use pageantry and fucking the dog and pony show of the Nazis, and creating this glorified Third Reich and this uniformity and all this crap, and that we're going to dominate the world. What the world learned, particularly those who do like authority and stuff, is that you can't do it that way, because you'll create more resistance than anything else, and then eventually it'll lead to your downfall. The only way is through subversive tactics.
Yeah, isn't that just completely fascinating?
Well, and so now, the world's dominated by those who are masters of subversive tactics. So that does include nations, that does include corporations, because they all think that they're smarter than everybody else because we're all trapped, right? Because we're not free. We're trapped by everything that we think, right? Remember metacognition, we talked about this before. Right. It's where you understand the thoughts that you're thinking and then how they influence your behavior. Nobody does that.
I would say we're getting, younger people are getting sold this idea of subjectivity to a degree that's like, it's almost obvious if you've ever spent any time trying to get out of subjectivity. Like, it's very interesting that the people that want freedom the most and rah for it the most, they're these people that want to place on more regulation, more laws.
Yeah, they want to impose their will on others. And then I go, so wait, if you're imposing your will, how's that an act of freedom?
Right, they're even more authoritarian that way.
It makes you a tyrant. It's the thinking of the tyrant. It's the stupidity of the tyrant, right? I love the fact that humans are unruly. I love it. You're the best because you're unruly, right? But you have to become master of your fucking house. If you can't master your fucking house, then you'll be someone else's stooge, right? We live in a world full of stooges. They all suck ups and they all think, and they all genuinely think that they're doing the right thing. That's the problem. They reduce everything to being right or wrong. No reflection of nuance or any real meaningful understanding. None. Right? Because it's my way or the highway.
Yeah, like the whole moral argument. I feel like there is no moral argument for things. It's just, practically speaking, you said this a million times. Am I getting fucked over? Am I fucking someone else over?
To me, it took me most of my life to figure all this out, but I'm now I refuse to be a participant. So I participate in the manner in which that I'm comfortable with. Right? I don't hang my head. I don't get down on one knee. I got bad knees anyway. So I refuse to get to sit there and be a teetotaler for some asshole because they think that they know better. Look, and I've experienced this personally. Narcissistic assholes who think that that their definition of respect and that you're obligated to somehow respect them, and they use the word respect as an umbrella term, but what they really mean is like to do as you're told. Right? And so again, in a very real way, I've experienced this at the hands of other people who presume that they knew better. Not only that they knew better, that I should be doing as I'm told. And then when I didn't, what'd they do? Gaslight me, assassinate my character, go out of their way to try and turn other people against me. Go, come on. So this is the behavior of the free? Fuck you.
When somebody 100% believes and points out that you're doing something wrong, you still get the impression that it's something to look into, right?
Look, when somebody points out somewhere where they think that there might be I'm a failing in what I'm doing, I always listen. But what I'm listening for is sound argument. Present a reasonable and sound argument that what I'm doing is somehow inappropriate. And I'll be the first one to self-correct. I'll go to my way to change, to accommodate that new insight. But you better have a pretty compelling thing. If you come off like you're self-serving, I'll fucking come after you like a rabid dog.
I mean, that's fair enough. If you give it time, you think about it. Of course, there's like limitations to how far you can think about a certain problem, because you can't have a small problem take up a year of your thought.
Right. Like, again, perspective, right? Like the perspective again is another demonstration of intelligence, right? So that again, you give priority to the things that are important in terms of what's going on at any given moment in your time. So if it takes precedence over the other things that you'd rather be doing, then you do those things that take priority first. And then you go back to the other things that you like to do.
Yeah, like if you're having an argument, but if you and your friend are joking and you're razzing each other, just, hey.
But that's just fun.
Right. No, it shows that you're more comfortable with your capability or incapability, depending on which side of the coin you want to see. Like, either way, you're more accepting of someone calling you a shithead or a fucking hippie.
Yeah, man. I totally, like, for me, none of that, when it's done in jest and in good fun, you'll know.
Right. There's
that-
some people who can't take it whatsoever.
Oh no,
They have no fucking capability.
they have no ability to appreciate a good sense of humor, or rather, they lack a good sense of humor.
And yeah, that for me that's inhuman. You need to have some really good smiling muscles over the course of your life.
I think a beautiful. I think a wide smile on a human face that's genuine is one of the most beautiful things out there, right? And I love it when I see people smiling. And to me, I go there's great value in that, like that, right? It's an obvious expression of like a moment of joy.
The bitter, I don't want to say they're bitter people, but these people who are bitter in these circumstances where I meet them, I just noticed they're unreceptive, they won't play, they won't hear you out, none of this.
Well, because they're trapped in their subjectivity. So what they favor first and foremost is their view. So their worldview supersedes everyone else's, right? So what they lack is probably what is considered our strongest survival instinct, is our ability to be to sympathize with each other.
So I was gonna. Sorry, I got way.
It's okay.
You think about that. They're just a fucking wounded animal. That's all they are at the moment.
And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who complete slaves to their ego, to stimulus-independent thought, the default mode network, their preferences, their biases, their opinions, their prejudices, and you can sum it all up as subjectivity. And to them, nothing is more important than that, because it means that they're important. Well, I don't treat myself with any kind of fucking real serious value. At least no more value than the person standing next to me. I'm not more important than anyone, right? So all I'm trying to do is make heads or tails, trying to understand what's going on, and then to act in a way that reflects what's going on. That in an appropriate kind of sense, where I'm not like using other people or victimizing other people.
I would say you're very vocal, but you're not like reactive.
No, because right, I don't suffer fools. I do no harm, take no shit.
I'm sorry, I'm talking shit right now. You really don't like golf. It's to an extreme level.
I fucking hate golf.
Why are these guys hitting balls with sticks? You're wasting time.
What a waste of fucking prime real estate.
Okay, I'm with you on that. No, yeah.
Sorry for you golf lovers out there. I'll only offer up this caveat. I do appreciate the zen of golf, but everything else after that is fucking bullshit.
I think golf has a really it takes a lot of effort to get good at swinging it just right, that you hit it down the lane. Personally, I like throwing rocks. It's much more my speed.
It's way easier, less expensive to do. Like, golf's an expensive hobby.
Yeah, for some reason. I found it cost about $60 for, I think it was a game of only...
I haven't golfed since I think the last time I golfed might have been just after I got out of high school.
Dude, I spent $60 on going through like half the plot. Like, not all the holes, only half. I was like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, I don't, like you said, it's not, for me, like, as soon as I hear, yeah, we'll go golfing, yeah, knock yourself out.
I got some sticks in a lake, I'm just going to toss it.
It's all good. And again, I don't fault people. For those who do love it, I'm good for you.
Right.
Although, I have a funny anecdote, but I won't tell the anecdote. But I tanked a date by verbally assaulting golf. So my date was after I like trashed golf. She's like, my whole family's part of a golf club, and they're long-standing members, like for.
Dude, that's silly.
And I'm like going, okay, so I guess it means the date's over. It's like right. Yeah. So again, as a fun distraction as that was, remember what we're talking about is subjectivity. So subjectively speaking, I don't like golf, right? Objectively speaking, I appreciate why others do like golf, right? Yeah. I just don't personally like it. But remember, I don't treat my preferences like they're valuable or important. So my subjectivity isn't running my show. I'm master of my subjectivity. It's not master of me. Right? And I have enough metacognition. I recognize when, my subjectivity might be, overstepping its bounds, right? And so then I very quickly readjust so that it's not making dominate. It's not making decisions. It needs to shut the fuck up and do as it's told, right? So that's the nature of my subjectivity since we brought it up, and it's mostly because, again, I would offer this up as probably the strongest instinct that we have is because I sympathize with whomever it is that I'm dealing with, but not at the expense of myself. I won't let you railroad me. I won't let you speak inappropriately or ill of me to me, right to my face. You're courting disaster if that's what you're doing, because you're not going to get an inch of ground from me. Right? And honestly, I expect everyone to behave in exactly that same way.
Just stand up for themselves.
That's right, 100%. That you assert yourself, particularly when it's obvious what someone else is trying to do, that they're trying to dominate you, that you give them just cause to back the fuck off. Right?
I have that issue with myself, like an internal conflict when we're doing these, because I have to pay attention, but depending on the conversation, I get so giddy. I just want to go on tangents.
Dude, it's great. It makes for more interesting conversations. So please, I did in regards to our conversation, I did want to just touch on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but I don't even know that we need to really jump in heavily, other than to say that, remember, of the 5 needs, the 5th one was the one to me that seemed the most potent, and the idea of self-actualization. Right? So once, most of us spend all of our lives trapped in the first basic need, and that's the first, say, 3. So we're trapped by our physiological needs for food, shelter, clothing, our need for safety, protection from the elements, security, a sense of stability, right? And then 3, a sense of belonging. You get people in groups and they wave flags. It's feeding into this need, this requirement, right? And I'd rather be part of a group of people who gravitate towards each other because they appreciate like-mindedness, not in the same way as like waving a flag, patriotism, that independence of thinking, demonstrations of independent intelligence. That's what I like, right? So again, you can see where people across society, regardless of whatever status that they have within society, can be trapped by these psychological and physiological needs, right? And the 4th being esteem, a sense of which includes confidence and strength. But to me, esteem and self-realization, the last 2, you create those. You create those, and you do it by honoring who you are. And then the key to that is you take responsibility for your own existence, as you cited so many times throughout this course of this conversation. You take responsibility for your own life, your actions, your thoughts, everything, all of it. And then your purpose and drive, master your nature, expand your capacity, right? That's where the real value is, man. Fucking do that, and then, like I said, it'd be the kind of world that kind of thinking would produce, radically different than the one that we experience from day to day, right? Because now it would be the majority of the people that lived within it would have a high self-esteem and would be highly self-actualized. I'm going, wow, man, wonder what that would be like. And we've never seen that in the course of our history. We've never seen it. So I would argue It's an idea whose time has come. Or maybe that's the point of all of this shit, right? But the point of all of this is to evolve as individuals so that you have the highest confidence, strength, belief in yourself, right? Real important shit. And then you realize all the potentials that you are, self-actualization. Then everybody becomes a force in nature. Shit, that's a place I want to hang out in.
Imagine that, like, every friend you have is their own icon in their own way. I'm not sure if icon is the right word, but I was thinking it was said by somebody it takes about 10 years to re-educate a population because you go through school, you get out of school, now you're in the workforce, and doing that over the course of 10 years, historically it's been for reasons I wouldn't like. But if you think about it, how easy is it to sell to somebody that they could do self-mastery however they do it, like through their own methods?
Right.
Because they do in 5 years.
They can do it in a fraction of that time.
Yeah.
But methodology becomes really important then, because now we're getting to the how do you do it. Okay, so leaning into the how you do it. There's this theory. It's called polyvagal theory, and it proposes that the evolution of the mammalian autonomic nervous system provides the neurophysical substrates for adaptive behavioral strategies. Super complicated language to simply say that our nervous system is pliable, and we talked about that already. Neuroplasticity, right, and neurogenesis. So that means that not only is it capable of learning new things, but it can generate better and greater interconnectivity. So that you have a more whole integration between the left and right side of the brain. And the entire nervous system works far more efficiently. But it's a direct result of how you train it, how you feed it. So then things like meditation become important. Here's the cool thing. There's enough forms of meditation out there that you can find one that works for you specifically. And what I mean by that appeals to your level of sensibilities. And then you use that method, right? Physical conditioning. You find some form of training. I would simply offer, get involved in the martial arts. Again, tons of really great martial arts out there that would appeal to any sensibility. It doesn't matter which one you choose. Ultimately, that much doesn't matter. It's what it provides you as the individual, right? Become physically active as much as humanly possible in the course of your day-to-day life. Get out in nature. I'm not saying ignore the internet and don't be a participant, don't have a phone. What I'm saying is that you change your perspective with all of it, and then you have balance. So you still have the ability to surf the net and explore stuff that way. And then you honor yourself by, engaging regularly in some kind of physical activity, and that you pursue something that'll allow for the polyvagal effect, which means that, like, again, to enhance your nervous system. Meditation, which also has a psychological benefit. It trains the nervous system to favor being present in the current moment. Condition yourself to do that. You do it. You can't look to institutions to do it for you. You're the student. Seek a master. You don't even need one master, multiple masters. Spend enough time with them until you become the master. And what are you master of? Self. And then the other component is then you start exploring, like, new information, new ideas. Broaden your horizons, right? Seek knowledge. Grow as a fucking human being, right? This is the way. It's the only way. we've done every possible way that you can do. And all of them ever only produce misery, suffering, and body counts. And we've never tried this. And in this, until we actually make the effort, there's no way of knowing how well it will or won't work. But it's certainly worth the doing. And you'll feel like you'll feel like a better you, because your whole life will be about realizing all your potentials, pushing beyond all your limits. What more rewarding existence could there possibly be?
I wanted to throw in, I feel like even though people will find their own methods of self-mastery, there is no methodology. Like, it relates to that there's many paths to the top of the mountain.
Miyamoto Musashi.
But if you think about everything else we experience throughout our life, especially in this kind of culture, we are given these presuppositions, like, these axioms, these really strong, if you do this through this methodology, you get this. It's like, we don't live in certainty.
That's just advertisers trying to, again, exploit you to make money.
Right. I felt like you were getting towards this idea that in order to find self-mastery, you have to give up this idea of, to get to mastery, you have to both be dedicated, aware, patient. You have to have all these qualities.
And discipline, 100%. It's consistency that wins the game.
And you've said this before, even. If you want to be free, you have to get rid of your expectations.
Right.
Like, that's incredibly tough, because people find expectations and comfort and, like, this idea, like, oh, we understand. It's like, we might not.
You're 100% spot on. It is difficult, but it'd be the most worthwhile thing you've ever done. So you as an individual, if you're looking for this ultimate sense of satisfaction where you can consistently feel good about yourself, there's no other place you're going to find it other than self-mastery.
I feel like
and yes, you're 100% spot on. It's going to be work, and in some cases, hard work.
I feel like we as a culture see the world through, like, a material scientist kind of reductionist view, and there's a lot of us who are also artistic. Like, none of us are one thing.
Right.
But I find more connectivity with the world when I think about, like, life is kind of like music. Like, it's shapeless, it's colorless, it's present. Even though on the surface level I would try to reduce things, I want to reduce things because I've, these amazing eyes. I can see across a room, I can see a color, I could see a movement of a tree branch. I want to reduce things to, I objectively know this. But I feel like, to be objective, a lot of it is, I'm working on some presuppositions. I can't allow those presuppositions to be so crystalline that they are like an expectation. They are the solid ground. There is no solid ground.
Right. So then, because there's no solid ground, then you have to move with the natural flows and rhythms of day-to-day life. Wu Wei.
Yeah.
Right?
I love how so much of this seems interconnected. Like, it seems like it's a text that's 100% more real than any real fact.
It all overlaps. Right? It all overlaps. And you can reduce it even further still. That, like, look, there's only real two options. Either we stand together, right? Oneness, unity, or division. That's it. Those are the only real choices. Right? And so whichever you subscribe to, and I'll guarantee you this, division services authoritarians. Because then it's way easier for them to do what they do if we're divided and conquered. Right? So no unity, no oneness. I hear people say oneness all the time, like as though, like, but I'm like, dare them to define it. Oneness. What is that oneness? That we're one. So how do you want to sum that? One mind. That now expresses itself in 8 billion different ways and growing.
Right, because when I think about this idea of unity, it's not like it's just one large hive mind. It's more like through each individual being the most them they can be, we are unified. Which sounds weird because we're saying it's on an individual level. Paradoxical as fuck.
It is paradoxical, but that's the nature of reality, right? And most of us have been trained or conditioned in such a way that we don't like the idea that it's both. It's not either or, right? It's more, again, it'd be more convenient if it was one or the other, but it's not. Life's not black and white. It's both black and white. So that means it's gray, right? But everybody doesn't want that. They're like, no, it's murky. Gray is where you wash away division, right?
That's also what a discussion is. Holy shit. No, because you already know. Fuck, what am I doing? But
It's okay, just say it.
No, that's amazing. Because if you think about any discussion, why the fuck would you talk to somebody if they know exactly what you know? They have to bring their perspective, and then it's not necessarily a battle, but a comparison.
That's right, a comparative study. So then what you do is now you lay all the cards on the table and you go, hey, which one seems better?
How meta is this?
Right? All I'm saying is like that the evolution of us as human beings is not dictated by governments, by authorities. It's dictated by humans. So not a small group of humans. Every human. Actually, every living thing.
It sounds like you're saying it's something that exists and is found every moment that is here, like every single moment. See, that's so woo-woo. I want to not accept it, but like that's.
But it doesn't make it less true. Like even though it challenge because it's controversial and it challenges everything that we think we are, and it's really like out there. Like to say that it's out there, like I'm really going far out on the edge of the limb.
Right, but I feel like it's consistent. It's not like pushing any barriers around in my head. It's like, oh, that conflicts with this. It's like, no, that's pretty fucking consistent.
Yeah, and it allows for all the contradictions that we experience, and fully allows for all of that stuff to coexist. Right. So and then again, you suddenly start going, isn't that unity? Right.
I mean, we're part of one world, but the whole world is made up of individual molecules. Like, it's this kind of dichotomy that we see throughout everything.
Well, okay, so then the universe at large, you just described it by using this description that, in the microcosm. So in the macrocosm, it's all the same. Contradictions abound. No matter how much you scale it up or scale it down, it's the same. Right? And all of this exists so that you can experience, so you can have the experience of being here. Well, then the focus then has to be then the moment, because that's what being here is. It's the present, right? So and the failure is that we don't treat that with any value, and two, we're not conditioned or trained to actually even be able to do it. Hence the requirement for self-mastery. Or you can go through another 6,000 fucking years of bloodshed and taking advantage of each other and stepping all over each other. Or you can let some asshole finally dominate the world and shape it in their vision, like some stupid Adolf Hitler or some asshole like that. Joseph Stalin. Yeah, fuck those guys. Right? So it's not about a singular vision by some single individual who thinks that they're Alexander the Great is going to dominate the entire known world. Right? It's about being here and then experience the richness of being here.
I feel like anybody trying to get to that position where they're at the top, trying to rule over, that in itself is arrogance, because we aren't intelligent as individuals the way I see it. The way I see it is we're we're intelligent through our cooperation. Like that's our fundamental skill.
Right. So I would say that those are individuals who are hopelessly enslaved by their subjectivity. Like anyone who aspires to, I have a vision. I'm going to dominate and shape the world in that vision. You're the most boring motherfucker ever come into existence. It's such a limited kind of vision or capacity. It demonstrates only limitedness. And here I'm talking about here, you can be unlimited. But you have to train to be unlimited. Particularly if you've already been trained to be limited. So then that means you have to break with the conditioning and then find other methods of training to elevate yourself beyond the original conditioning.
I feel like metacognition, if it's your first time approaching it, it's going to be so baffling, this idea that you could be self-training.
Again, because Lao Tzu said a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So that's where you're at. So as overwhelming as it may seem, if you find metacognition something a bit too challenging, have heart. Just keep showing up. Eventually you'll figure it out. Right? Start the journey. It doesn't matter how long it takes. You have an entire lifetime to do it in. You know, what more focus and purpose could you want to your existence other than to realize yourself in the entirety? And it's a lifetime pursuit. You're not going to do it in a year, 6 months, a week, 10 years. You're going to do it over the course of a lifetime.
That's why I brought up the 10 years to re-educate populace. The idea of that is that if you give them an idea and convince them of this idea, they can run with it, and the society would be changed after 10 years. But what if it's fucking true? What if it's a real idea, like self-mastery, metacognition? Not only will you not have to waste time, I wouldn't say, well, you don't spend time training them, because it's inherently something they could do.
Right. It has to be self-directed.
Right.
You can't institutionalize this. The moment that you create an institution, you can expect bureaucracy and nothing but problems. So this has to be an individualized purpose that you come to the conclusion and then you actively pursue it. You as the individual. That you can't create churches or universities, or that's the mistake. Those are the mistakes of the past. You seek knowledge for its sake, and then you seek training for its sake, and then you do it. There's enough of it out there. You just have to find one that works.
Since it's not like an industry or an institution, it's an individual thing. And because of the way the law of averages works, not only will you have some people that are able to complete it,
earlier or quickly.
Earlier than 10 years.
Right.
Like, if they do it in 5 years, maybe that's the average. That's fucking amazing. That cuts down the time to educate people in half. It also allows them to educate themselves in the most productive way for them. And there's always going to be those fucking David Goggins-like people who are going to be like...
They're leading the charge.
Yeah, within 3 years, they're like, I got my stuff together. I want to be the most me I could be. And I think that's like exponentially growing. That is so much more strong. This idea of you have to educate people to be good. You have to force them to be good.
No,
you have to have ideologies to be good.
No, you just give them the opportunity to learn and to grow, and they'll do it on their own.
Right.
Right? The entire foundation of Montessori education. So it not only is it practical, it does exist in the real world, but in a limited capacity. And all I'm saying now is that it can become commonplace. And here's the wild thing. The wild thing is that however quickly individuals advance, you'll see them be supportive and mutually supportive of those who are struggling, and then help them out in terms of, here, have you thought about trying it the way they're doing? So we end up lifting each other up. Again, what could be more worthy?
The awesome thing about that is, if you think about it in math terms, like, it's not like, oh, it's doubled, or it's to the power of 2, where it's like doubled every time.
Right.
It's like an exponential where it's 2 to the power of 2, and then 4 to the power, Yeah, 4 to the power of 4. I don't know why I messed up on that one.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all good.
Like, it's awesome. No, wait, that would be doubling our time. Cubic,
So basically,
whatever.
you just double. You're double. If every day you doubled,
Right.
the amount of people who aspired to self-realize.
Yeah, like today I could help me. Tomorrow I could help my friend. The next day I could help a different friend, myself, and another friend. And
right.
now my friend's helping other people.
Right. So then that's how it grows. And then you can't. It's not centralized. There's no leadership. You don't need a goddamn guru. You don't need somebody showing the way. You just do the work. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. You just got to show up, and you just got to do the work.
There would be diversity in that too, which a lot of people say they want lately.
Right. Well, that kind of diversity would allow for you to interpret that as freely as you wanted, as long as you adhered to the basic concept. You're going to struggle to balance, unify mind, body, and spirit. Right? That's the road to self-mastery. So then you figure out what that means. And then you find your way to do that. Now, again, if you're asking me, I always make the argument. It has to include a form of meditation and ideally a form of martial arts, but it doesn't have to. But you might want to take it seriously. At the very least, the meditation, and then everything else after that. Expand your understanding, expand your knowledge, grow as an individual. You'd be amazed. Change the nature of your relationship, the default mode network, with your ego, with your emotions, so they're not making decisions anymore. And so it's not you ignoring that part of who you are, it's you embracing it, and then now you're liberated from it. You're not trapped by it. It's not making decisions. You are.
Yeah, you're not forced to do it. You're not forced to do it anyway, or you're not forced to do it at any time either. But if you don't do it, you lack it.
But then you run the risk of unnecessary suffering, right? Because subjectivity will always want to creep its ass in there, right? Yeah. So if you change the nature of your relationship with your subjective self and your subjective worldview, then you are a master, right? And then it doesn't go away; it's ever present, but you don't treat it with value. You just go, I like vanilla ice cream, and he likes chocolate. Who cares? Like as though it's somehow meaningful.
Right. That also goes to like the method. Like, I like chocolate, you like vanilla, my buddy likes skateboarding, you like martial arts.
Right.
Like, there's many ways to get to the top of the mountain. Any 100%. Path you take.
Right, 100%. So I think that the value then should be self-evident. Right, and especially in light of the conversation we just finished having. Yeah. So speaking of the conversation, how long are we into this one?
2 hours, 12 minutes in.
Oh yeah, okay. I think I'm ready to pull the ripcord. I think I'm done.
Is there any on there?
No, we covered all of that.
I gotta say, honestly, this is right off the bat. It was one of my favorite discussions we've had on camera.
Oh, excellent! I'm glad that you enjoyed it. Hopefully, you feel the same way next week.
I don't know, if we have too many of the best conversations
ever.
Yeah, I know the best is gonna feel like that's average.
Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
So the mean, the average, is greatness. Fuck, that's a great note to end this conversation on. Anything else you'd like to maybe say?
Have a great day. Have a great night. Have a good one.
Excellent. And I think I'd like to close by simply stating, question everything, including yourself, especially yourself. Seek balance, seek knowledge, seek understanding. Become a renegade, individualist, humanist, critical objective thinker. Self-mastery is the way. Have a wonderful night. Thank you for your time.